Hey, comic lovers. EMoney, the Old Man, and Thor, the Dog of Thunder, back with you again. Hey, Thor. What's up? There's going to be two of you in the White House in January. Did you know that? All right, so today we are talking about, well, I'm not going to be doing much talking in this episode because today
it's all about the old man today.
We are talking about Tales of a Comic Book Manager, of which the old man here was. Gonna be telling stories about his time working in a comic book shop in the 90s, right?
That's about right.
Mm-hmm. And then later, of course, we're gonna have our Stump the Old Man segment. So it's all about the old man today, all right? So get ready for Comic Book Wednesday, kids. This is Back Issues. Alright, comic lovers, so before we get started today, don't forget to subscribe, turn on your notifications, give us a like, and leave us a comment. We like to know that people are out there and they like what we're doing. Alright, so today we are going back to the 90s when you ran a comic book shop. And we wanted to deck it out with the 90s memorabilia. These figurines were some of the ones that were decorating the shelves and the walls in the behind the.
Right, we had them along the top of the good book wall.
Right.
And this, one of my customers had made, or made it himself in shop. It stands for Head Comic Book Dude.
And this is a picture of the store, but we're going to get to that in a minute. So. I know that you love your Hawaiian shirts now.
That's my thing.
It is your thing. But that wasn't your thing back in the 90s.
Well, no, I dressed like
that. Something similar to this.
Not similar, something exactly like that. Shorts.
So since we're flashing back to the 90s here, I dug this out of the old closet and thought you might want to put it on in honor of our 90s comic book episode.
Haven't seen this in a while, but
right?
Alrighty.
Alright, we'll be right back. There we go. Now that's 90s right there.
Boy, it definitely brings back memories.
Yep. You know, I mean, if we had taken the time to dye your hair and your beard, we'd be like stepping back in time.
Hey, it's stylish. It's my image. Now, do you even know who this is?
He is a guy who took over as Thor for a while when the actual Thor was gone or dead. Or
well, you're right, but you don't remember his name, do you?
Thunderstrike?
My man.
All right.
My man. All right.
Yeah, he was he was a kind of a placeholder Thor for a while there. A very 90s-esque Thor.
I thought his hammer was cool. It was a kind of a three-sided mace.
Right. All right, so stepping back in time here, but we don't start out in the 90s. We start in the mid 80s. So tell people how you got started doing comic books.
Well, I started for the same reason a lot of people start selling their collection. I needed the money. So I started setting up at the Stir Promotions flea market at the Kentucky State Fairgrounds. They did 10 shows a year. 2 of them were 4-day shows, the rest were 3-day shows. It was a pretty major commitment in time.
Mm-hmm.
I did that for, I guess, 4.
I remember getting paid $1 for helping you load or unload boxes when you packed it up in the house.
I paid you?
Yep, $1.
Huh.
Me and my next door neighbor friend.
Did you pay me for room and board?
No.
I feel like you stole from me. But at any rate, but basically I did that for 4 or 5 years. Didn't start out wanting to do anything besides raise money. People would come up to me and say, "Well, do you buy comics?" And I said, "No, I'm just liquidating a collection." Then 2 or 3 days went by and I was making good money. Keep in mind, I had a major collection of Marvel comics, complete runs of all but the first few issues of Amazing Spider-Man and Fantastic Four. Everything else were complete, total runs. After a couple of days of that, I started well, what do you got? Let me see what you have. And I started buying and selling. Next thing you know, I'm actually a comic book dealer. Um, there were a lot of stories about working the flea market, but I think we want to tell most of them about being a store manager. But I do remember one woman who came up to the booth, and I think I was working with Big Eric that day. You were Little Eric, he was Big Eric, kid that lived up the street. That moose could pick up 3 full 300 count long boxes of comics at a time. He got more than $1 for helping me. But at any rate, so me and Big Eric went to this woman's house after the flea market show was over for the day. And we stepped in her house, and she immediately explained that her son, who owned these comic books, had gone into the military. Well, several years went by, and she didn't hear from him. So finally she contacted the military and said, where's my son? So they checked into it, got back with her, and told her, ma'am, he has been out of the military for, I think it was a couple of years, and he's been living in Louisville. They had a Louisville address. Well, Mama was not happy about that. So she was selling all his stuff off. And to be honest, I think I could have gotten the comic books just by getting them out of her house. But
woman scorned and all that.
oh yeah, she was mad. So at any rate, so me and Big Eric went, and she pulled out all these binders. So I thought, okay, I've seen it before where somebody will have these pocket sleeves and you slide the comic book in there and put it in a binder. It's a terrible way to store a collection, but people did it. Well, flip open the first binder, and he didn't slide them into pouches. This guy took a 3-hole punch, punched holes in the comic books, and put them around the rings. Yeah, I was crushed, because looking through that collection, there was a lot of Silver Age, Marvel, and DC. There was some great stuff in there. But she gave me a really good price. I went ahead and bought them. And then we bagged them and put them in our cheap boxes and sold them as if they were poor condition comics. Some of them didn't go in cheap boxes. Some of them we sold for $3, $4, $5 because in near mint they were worth hundreds of dollars. And people who were trying to fill a run of a comic who couldn't afford hundreds of dollars for a decent copy were willing to pay $1 or $2 for a poor condition copy. So ended up being a good collection. I sold every one of them.
All right.
But that's all I get into on the flea market days.
All right. So how did you end up getting into a store?
Well, there was a gentleman named Sam Kanai and his wife Linda Kanai. They owned a pretty well thought of baseball card store in town named Triple Play. And in 1990, I think, Sam approached me because he wanted to expand into the comic book business. He was already buying comics, but he wasn't doing very well because he didn't know a lot about them and he didn't really enjoy reading them. But so he needed somebody to help him out. So we cut a deal where he paid me a modest salary, and I got to merge my collection in with his back issues, and anything of mine that I sold, I got to keep the money for. Triple Play was a really tiny store it was a terrible layout for a store, but it was a situation where Sam and Linda lived above the shop, which is a great deal. You wake up in the morning, go downstairs in your pajamas, open the store. You know, I get there, you'd go up to get a shower and get dressed. So interesting deal, but we did that for a while. I think one of the most interesting things that had happened while I was at Triple Play was a gentleman came in and he had a comic book that was horizontal, not the typical vertical like comic books are today. And this thing was a comic book that was drawn by Charlie Chaplin in like the 1920s. I think it was called Charlie Chaplin's Comic Capers, which was actually reprints of other work that he had done. Now, and I think this is true. I actually researched the name of the book just, this morning because I didn't remember what it was called, but it's all I could find that resembled what he brought in. And I realized that this thing wasn't going to sell cheap. And I probably wasn't going to have a customer that wanted to buy this thing. Back in the 90s, it was all superhero stuff. And I just didn't have that kind of clientele. So I recommended that he go to Sotheby's. Hated to see a comic book like that go because I knew, and I was right, I'd never see another one. So, interesting tidbit on while I was at Triple Play.
All right. So you didn't manage that store.
No.
No, you just worked in it and the deal you had with Sam. So how did you end up managing a comic book store?
Well, Sam's ambition was to have a second store. And he wanted the second store to be the opposite of Triple Play. Triple Play was heavy sports cards and memorabilia, some comic books. He wanted a store that was comic books with some sports cards and memorabilia, and he wanted to add role-playing games and tabletop games. So with that in mind, we found a location on Eastern Boulevard across the river in Clarksville, Indiana. And then we started pitching around what we going to call this thing. My best idea was Comics Asylum. I even had a little logo roughed out. I'm no artist, but I had something in mind. Well, they didn't like that. And then we pitched around a couple other names, and there were some good names in there. I don't remember what they were, but most of those names somebody already had and we couldn't use. So finally, I flipped through our back issues and I pulled out this comic book, which is a Jack Kirby, Captain America, and I said, all right, what if we called it Comics America, use Captain America on the signage, and back then the comic book companies, Marvel and DC, had a co-op deal where if you used their character in your advertising, they would have to approve it, but once they did, they would pretty much pay for your signage, which was a chunk of money. So that's how Comics America came to be. So we opened that store up, I think, in the spring of 1992.
Mm-hmm. All right, so the store is open.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you told me a couple of stories about your experiences with customers.
Me? I told you stories?
Yeah, you've shared a few stories.
Oh, man, how unlike me.
Yeah, working with the customers in the store. So, you mind sharing some of those with the internet today?
Well, since you twist my arm. All right, so let's see. First thing that comes to mind was a guy came in and he had his son with him. His son was looking at comic books. We had a bunch of tables and chairs set up for playing Magic or for tabletop gaming. So there's lots of places to sit. He pulls out a chair, sits down. And I'm not paying any attention to him, and I glance over there after a little bit, and he's lighting up a cigarette. I told him, whoa, you can't smoke in here. I mean, the smell of cigarette smoke and paper products, just a terrible idea.
Yeah.
So I said, you can't smoke in here, and he got real offended. And he looks at me and he says, what are you talking about? I've seen you smoking right here at one of these tables. Huh. Now, I admit, I tried smoking a pipe once when I was in college. Once. Learned my lesson. Never, not once, have I lit up a cigarette. No, one time in my entire life. Well, this guy pretty much calls me a liar. I took offense to that, kicked him out, and apologized to his son as he was leaving. So that was interesting to me. Have you ever had a deaf guy rip you a new one?
I have, actually.
Oh, okay. Well, you know what that's like.
I had a teacher in high school, and I was prone to fall asleep in class every now and then. So, I got the business a couple times.
Well, the comic shop, Comics America, was in the general vicinity of a deaf school over in Clarksville. So we had a lot of deaf customers, and over the years I got to where I could communicate pretty well, not with American Sign Language, I was too lazy to learn that, but just by learning gestures and body language and occasionally having to write something down. But yeah, I mean, they got along real good. We were pretty good friends with a lot of these guys. And I had one really good customer named Kurt Smith. Now, Kurt had come in, and I told you the story about the death of Superman on this channel, but Kurt came in and had ordered some special version of the Death of Superman. It wasn't bagged. It wasn't the platinum bag. There was something beyond that. It was like, I think it cost like $40. It was some special item. And he bought that, and a couple months went by, and he brings it back in and wants to sell it. I knew I was in trouble because the Death of Superman prices had gone up and had gone back down. It wasn't a hot item anymore. And I would have to sell this book for the same price he paid for it, which means I'm only going to offer him half, which I did, and he tore into me. Oh, man, he ripped me apart. And that, I don't know how it was with your teacher, but for me, that was very uncomfortable. Now, Kurt, he came back a month or two later and apologized, and we were good. I mean, it was all right, but boy, what a
bad day.
That was an interesting day, I'll say that much. So, next story is we sold role-playing stuff. Customer comes in, and it's a family. It's dad, mom, who I don't think said a word the entire time she was in the store. Older teenage boy, like 18, 19, he goes straight into the role-playing stuff. And there was a daughter, 15, 16 maybe. So dad goes and he posts up between the role-playing and the games and the rest of the store. And the daughter tries to go where the brother is and check out some of that stuff, and he wouldn't let her. He physically was not going to let her get past him. And mom gives him a look like, what are you doing? And he looks at her and he says, devil got my son, he's not going to get my daughter too. Whew. Well, I've been role-playing games for a long time, since before Comics America. In fact, I still run a group. We meet once a month now. And it's not satanic, I guarantee you. I mean, when we sacrifice a goat, we eat the goat. No, somebody out there is going to actually believe that, but no, there's nothing satanic about role-playing. But at any rate, that was a weird situation. So then we had the 12-cent scenario, which is one of my favorites. Young boy was coming in the store, and he kept asking for something off our good book wall. It was a 12-cent Silver Age book. I don't remember which one. Seems like it sold for, I don't know, 40 or 50 bucks. And he probably came in 6-7 times over the span of a few months. And kept telling me, I'm going to get that book. I mean, I was actually hoping we didn't sell it. And we didn't. Comes in one day, and he's got an older lady with him, who I assume is his grandma. And she asked to see the book. I was already reaching for it. Hand it to her, and she looks it over and says, is this what you want? I said, yes, ma'am. And she says, we'll take it. So I go to the cash register. I ring it up. I tell her to be $40 plus tax. And she goes off. Like, what are you talking about? That's a 12-cent magazine. I'm like, ma'am, this thing is from the early 1960s. It's a collector's item. You're not going to find one for 12 cents. It doesn't matter. It's a law. You have to sell it for what it has on the cover. And I tried to be rational with her. I tried to explain, if a brand new comic came in straight from the distributor, and I think back then comic books were $2.50. And I said, it can have $2.50 on the cover. If I want to put a $10 price tag on it, that's up to me.
Right. It's called the suggested retail price.
Right. I probably wouldn't sell it for $10, but that's my choice. And she wasn't having it. So she didn't get the comic. Kid's nearly in tears. She storms out telling me I'm going to hear from her lawyer, which I did not.
No. I mean, it's a dumbass lawyer to take that one.
Oh, no lawyer would have taken that one.
No.
But at any rate, that was one of my favorite stories to tell. Another story, which wasn't in our shop, but was in Comic Book World over here in Louisville.
Mm-hmm.
I was visiting with the manager. His name's Doug Adams. He was known him for 3 decades, maybe 4. We'd check in with each other once in a while, see what was going on. I was visiting, and one of his customers came in. I mean, he was sad, just looked like somebody hung his dog. And Doug says, "Hey man, what's wrong?" He says, "I don't know what to do. My box that has all my Batman comic books in it, it's full. And I don't know where to file the stuff that doesn't fit." And he went on to explain different scenarios where you would have to put Batman in with Captain America, which, oh no, we can't do that. Or he'd have to put Batman in with Green Lantern, or he was going to have to make some moves and change the stuff around. So I said, in my innocent attempt to help, well, why don't you take the Batman comics that won't fit in that box for now and just put them on top of that box of Batman comics until you get enough where it deserves its own box. Bite my tongue, you would thought that I was just trying to strangle him or something. I mean, he looked at me like I was an insane person. But at any rate, I thought that was funny.
Mm-hmm.
I guess when it comes to telling stories about Comics America customers, it's not done until you talk about the Turtle Man. Bless his heart. This guy would come in, I don't know, once every couple weeks. Never bought a thing. Not once. I mean, we kind of felt sorry for him because he was obviously lonely. And he would strike up a conversation with somebody who worked in the store. And would talk and talk and talk. I give him credit, he didn't know a lot about comic books. But he would try to keep it some sort of pop culture related conversation. And it got to a point where it was just insane. So me and a guy who worked with me named Jeremiah, we came up with this game. Whoever's turn it was, and a lot of times we would just do the paper, rock, scissors like we do to just decide whose turn it was. And whoever lost the thing would have to engage Turtle Man. And you would start talking at one end of the store or the other. There was a glass counter that ran from the front of the store all the way to the back. It was a pretty long store. So you would start talking to the Turtle Man, and you would start walking toward the other end of the store. Now you'd have to take him with you. If he didn't go with you, you had to go back and get him. He had to go with you. And you would walk all the way to the end of the store, touch the far side of the counter, turn, and go back to the other side. Each trip, one way or the other, was a point. And we had a little postcard on the side of one of the racks with what the record was. And you would try to keep him with you as long as you could, which, to be honest, it wasn't that hard to keep him with you. In fact, if you would just, yeah, oh yeah, do that, he'd be right with you. If you broke the previous record, whether it was the other guy's record or your own record, the other guy had to buy you lunch that day. Now, the only way to end the session, maybe you got too tired, or maybe you broke the record and you were just done, you look at the other guy and you do this. Our phone system in the store, there was a phone in the front of the store, a phone in the back of the store. You could call the other extension from the other phone. You would ring the phone closest to the poor guy who's frantically doing this, and then you would look at the Turtle Man and say, well, I got to get this. And usually he'd take a hint. Every once in a while you go down and start talking to the other guy, but usually he'd take a hint and cut out. But yeah, he was something.
Was there ever a situation where the other guy got busy and the first guy was trapped?
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
Sometimes you just broke the record, without meaning to?
Definitely. I mean, I think the last time I remember a record being set was 19.
All right, so that's Turtle Man there.
Well, good old Turtle Man.
Mm-hmm. So what did you like most about running a local comic shop?
Well, I'll be honest with you. There was a lot of things that were great. I remember every Wednesday was New Comic Book Day. Comic books came in real early. We would all meet at the store and unbox them. We even we bagged all the new comics, something no other store in the area was doing. So it took a while, but man, opening up those boxes, seeing the new comics, seeing if somebody got a cool special order, or maybe even a brand new T-shirt for this guy. But yeah, that was fun. And to be honest, over the years, I made a lot of friends. I mean, there's a lot of people I still keep in touch with. There's Clemens with the K. He's a vet up in Indiana. There's Steve Bohannon. He's somewhere out in Arizona doing some craziness with nature, I think. They're still gamers. Buddy of mine named Andy, who's still in my current role-playing group. A lot of people I still stay in contact with. So yeah, there was a lot of friendships made. I guess some of the conversations that went on. Think of a comic book shop as a barber shop, where all the old guys are sitting around trading stories. A comic book shop is a bunch of younger guys sitting around having geek conversations. For example, one of the ones I loved to have was, what do you do if you're fighting a guy wearing a cape? Is it smart to wear a cape if you're going to be in a fight? And I used to say, and this was before the Avengers, where Hulk grabs Loki and does him like a rag doll. But I used to say, I'll grab that guy with a cape and I would just fling him around. And then we'd have a conversation where we'd pick teams. Somebody'd always pick Superman first, and I'd always counter with taking Doctor Strange. Another one we'd have a lot was, you'd have any power, what would you pick? What would you pick?
Am I fighting crime?
That's up to you.
If I'm fighting crime, I need some form of invulnerability, because I'm not doing the Batman thing. If I'm just having fun, I guess I would want something that I can either travel or it makes me money. So I guess flight or teleportation.
Well, teleportation sounds moderately safe. Flight, you better have that vulnerability if you take flight, because sometimes landing might not be that much fun.
Yeah.
Now for me, they wouldn't let me pick this because I picked it all the time, but matter manipulation. Oh, you are now a bar of gold. Thank you. So some of the chats we had, they were just a lot of fun. I mean, any day but Wednesday, which was obviously our busiest day, but we could sit around and talk for hours.
Yeah.
Then we had a couple special guests come in. I remember specifically Brink Stevens. She was doing a tour promoting a comic book that she made. And this lady was married to I can't remember his name. His name was Stevens. He was a comic book artist, and he did Dave Stevens. He did the Rocketeer, and if you look at the Rocketeer's girlfriend, Dave used his, at that time, wife, Brink, to model for that girl. And Brink did a lot of modeling, but she finally got into movies. She was in, I don't know, you research and put a couple of the movies she was in, something about a bathtub slaughter. She did a lot of things. She was a femme fatale, or most commonly called a scream queen. Really nice lady, and definitely enjoyed her visit. Then we had Dave Cockrum in. Dave was the artist who drew Giant Size X-Men #1, X-Men 94 through at least like 10 issues, and then he went on to do maybe another 10 covers for that title. He's credited with creating some of the team, Colossus, maybe Nightcrawler, but yeah, he's credited with co-creating several of the new X-Men. He's a great guy. If there ever was a fanboy, Dave Cockrum was it. He, I don't know what Sam paid Dave to come in other than his travel expenses, but I promise you, whatever it was, he spent that in our store. I know that we had it might have been an Aurora model, Revell Aurora, of Muhammad Ali in a boxing ring where you've got both fighters and a referee on the model. And he bought that. And it was not a cheap model. But yeah, he was a big comic book fan and just all around good guy.
So a lot of great times at Comics America. I remember I spent many a Saturday at Comics America playing video games and whatnot.
You were busy eating Airheads.
Yes, I loved eating Airheads at Comics America. I would, they were 10 cents a piece. I had $1 or $2. And I could eat nothing but Airheads all day, and I would make them into sandwiches and put cherry, watermelon, cherry on top of each other and just rip into that. Yeah, it was fun. I like that. But a lot of great times at Comics America. So what happened to it?
Well, the last year, Sam had closed Triple Play and consolidated down to one store. And he had a stroke and a heart attack that last year. And I was working, a lot of times if he was out sick, which is quite a bit, I worked 7 days a week. I didn't mind, but he knew, and I did too, I knew that your mom was not going to have that for any great long period of time, which, I get it. And we were just barely getting by. I mean, if it wasn't for Magic the Gathering, we probably would have folded. Because, we did a video on comic books in the 90s.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a good time at all. And so we had to shut her down. And the last thing we did was we had an auction and sold off all the inventory, theirs and mine. And I tell you what, that was a sad day.
Mm-hmm. So that's what happened to Comics America. So you have anything to tell people in closing about the comic industry?
Well, the future of comic books right now is in question. I don't know how much you folks follow the news about what's going on. There's rumors that DC is going to go straight to digital and not going to print comic books anymore. Marvel keeps rebooting their universe. I'll be honest, I fear for the future of it. I mean, you're looking at the end of a literature form and one of the few true American art forms. You could be looking at the end of it. And I'll be honest with you, digital is not the answer. I mean, it looks like that's what they're going to go to, but I don't think that's the solution. But if you feel like I do, and you don't want it to come to an end, support your LCS, your local comic shop. Get out there, even if you're just buying a book or two a week. If things don't turn around, it's going to come to an end. And I, for one, I mean, we have never been real big on getting new comics. But even EMoney and I have started. We now have a pull list at our local shop, and we support them as best we can.
Yep. We visit a shop at least once a week, buying something. So support your local comic shop, and also support your YouTube channels. Subscribe, comment, and share it. Let friends know what you like if you like us, especially if you like us.
You know you do.
Yeah.
You know you do.
Right. I mean, you made it to the end of the video or near the end of the video here, so obviously you like us. So subscribe and share. All right, so that does it for this segment. So let's head outside with Stump the Old Man and see what Thor's up to.
Oh yeah, we're out back this time, so that way.
All right, kids, now it's time for our Stump the Old Man segment. Best 2 out of 3. Let's see if the old man can do it this week. Everybody ready? You ready, Thor? Your impartial judge?
Well, I don't know if he cares about anything but leave it. Leave it. Good boy.
Oh.
Good boy.
All right, here we go. Question number 1. How did the original Flash, Jay Garrick, gain his powers?
Ooh. Okay, I know how Barry Allen got splashed with chemicals with a lightning bolt.
Mm-hmm.
Lightning hit a bunch of wood, and the splinters hit him.
No. Jay Garrick got his powers from inhaling hard water vapors.
Why did he do that?
I don't know. Also, don't know how that gives you super speed, but it did.
I was gonna say, if that's what you got to do, I can take care of that. I
Right?
can do that.
Yeah.
I can't do lightning hitting chemicals, but
Mm-mm.
I can do inhaling hard water. I can do that.
Yep. All right, so over 1. All right, on to our Thor-related question this week. All right.
All about you, isn't it? All about you.
All right, so for a time, the city of Asgard existed in Midgard as a floating city directly above a small town in Oklahoma. Name that small town.
No, start with a B.
Mm-hmm.
Broxton.
Broxton, Oklahoma is the correct answer. I think their motto on their signs were neighbors to the gods, something like that.
As deservedly so,
Mm-hmm.
because they were.
Yep. All right, so 1 for 2.
Thank you for an easy one, buddy.
All right, third one. What Chester Gould character made his first appearance in the Detroit Free Press on October 4th, 1931?
Who?
Chester Gould.
You decided to stump me this week, didn't you? I have no idea.
All right, Chester Gould's immortal Dick Tracy made his first appearance in the Detroit Free Press on October 4th, 1931.
I had no hope on that one.
He was modeled after the innovative Sherlock Holmes. Dick Tracy introduced the world to new crime-fighting technologies,
Leave it.
such as the two-way wrist TV and the engineless car that took the detective to the moon. So,
I remember him going to the moon in that silly yellow tube thing.
yep. So, 1 for 3 this week. The old man is stumped.
This is supposed to be my week, too.
Yep. Sorry to disappoint. All right, comic lovers, that about does it for this episode. But before we go, let's talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing next week.
Good old next week.
Yep. So I think we can both agree that superheroes have the monopoly on comic books.
By far.
Yeah. But that doesn't mean there's not a lot of great non-superhero comics out there. And next week we're going to be counting down some of our favorites. A few of them, just off the top of my head, has a very successful show on AMC. Another one just finished up their first season on Netflix. And those are just off the top of my head. So a lot of great non-superhero comics out there, and we're going to be counting them down. All right, so we'll see you kids next week. Excelsior.
True believers, take care of friends and family. It's on you. Good job.